I'm not sure if the Deputy Minister is available. Welcome, Deputy Minister in absentia, the DG, the DDGs present, and all other officials of the Department of Employment and Labor. This is a second meeting for the day. We had a meeting with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, where they were tabling their annual report. We made opening remarks highlighting firstly that we're coming from a year 2020, which had its own challenges, particularly with regard to the COVID-19. Also indicated that I'm one of the victims of the COVID-19. Actually, today is the first day that I'm attending any meeting that has to do with the work of Parliament. The last meeting, Honorable Minister, was a meeting where we invited the department and yourself together with the Auditor General. That was the last meeting I attended that has to do with the work of Parliament. On the 13th of October, I was diagnosed with the coronavirus. And the difficult part is that it was severe for me. As such, it took a very long time for me to recover. Actually, I'm still attending to the doctors. I ended up having a high blood pressure and a problem with my kidneys. Yesterday, I went to the cardiologist because I have some pains around my left-hand side of my body. So I'm still recovering from the COVID-19 complications. In the morning also, we express condolences with the families of those that died because of this COVID-19. We also made mention of the fact that there are currently close to 45,000 people that died as a result of COVID-19. More than 1 million people have been infected, but also we note that there are thousands of people that are recovering. We also made mention of the fact that Parliament itself has also not been spared. There are members of Parliament and staff of Parliament who passed away as a result of this coronavirus. We also made mention of some members that came to our attention. Also that on the 31st, on Sunday, we lost one of the members of Parliament, Honorable Toza Mamandashe, who was a member of the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry and Competition. We also indicated that there were also other members that passed away. Honorable Jackson Tembu, Honorable Shabalala, Honorable Nombulelo Hermans, Honorable Bozoli, as well as other members that succumbed to COVID-19. If I'm perhaps not making them, because some people have died not as a result of COVID-19, but perhaps I could be assuming that some have died as a result. But there are a lot of staff members also who passed away as a result of that. Again, as I did in the morning, I would ask again members and the staff if we could have a moment of silence to observe and send our condolences to the families of those that were affected, especially those that succumbed to COVID-19. A moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Can we then formally start with the meeting? And committee secretaries, can we have an indication as to who is present and also if there are any apologies from members? And then we then give to the minister to introduce the delegation.
Yes, Chair. In terms of members present, we've got Honorable Moimang, Honorable Matabula, Honorable Apleni, Honorable Brotaseth. And obviously yourself, I don't think I missed any other members.
Okay, no,
thank you. Sorry, Chair, just one more thing. In terms of apologies, we've got an apology from Honorable Boshoff and Honorable Dango.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we're going to continue then with the meeting. We have this morning, while we were in the meeting of DTIC, we were informed that Minister Nxesi, excuse me, will be with us for 1 hour as he will be attending another meeting. So at this stage, we'll hand over to the minister to make opening remarks, and then hand over to the DG to introduce the delegation. We also welcome, I see that the Deputy Minister is with us. We welcome you, Deputy Minister. Yes. Over to you, Minister Nxesi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair, and the honorable members of the Select Committee. The Deputy Minister, DG, and the senior management of the department, the members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity. But I must also pep you up a bit. The after effects of that are not going to go away very quickly. I'm still experiencing that even today. There are days which are very difficult. Then I run to the doctor, they say there's nothing. I suspect you will also get some experiences also from the Deputy Minister about what you were talking about. But I think all it says is vaccine or no vaccine, all of us must just be extra careful now. Do not take chances. But the work must continue. The Select Committee has requested the following from the department: an overview of spending by department as reflected in the annual financial statements, with a breakthrough or a breakdown of spending in provinces, an overview of the non-financial performance and attainment of targets within programs, reasons for non-attainment of targets and challenges, a breakdown of unauthorized, irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure and actions taken to address this. and an overview of the findings of the AG and steps taken to address these findings. As per tradition, Chairperson, the DG and his management team will provide the detailed presentation. And mine is to briefly provide an overview to flag certain issues. Maybe you started the meeting very well, Chairperson, by relating your personal experiences. When last were you at work? The DG is also going to tell you that more than half of our staff members, if not 70%, were never at work for almost 8 to 9 months last year. They were said to be working from home. As to that, whether that is manageable or, and as a result, I think a number of programs have suffered with the reasons out of our control. Even from the side of management, it was not easy just to come to work. So we're operating on the skeleton staff. When we reopened, we're starting to see people coming back. We're at level 1, but even before we start opening, we went to level 3. But let me leave that performance in relation, or in relation to the performance, the department achieved a 79 rating against target set. Improvement strategies to address the areas of underperformance were put in place, and these have been built into the 2021 annual performance plan. Excuse me. In audit, in relation to those audit outcomes, the AG issued an unqualified audit opinion for 2019-20 financial year. The provincials spent 100% of their budgets, no under or over spending recorded. However, the national department branches spent on average between 93 and 95% of their allocations to provinces. As we know, or as we move into a new calendar year and towards the end of the financial year, still in the shadow of the pandemic and economic challenges that brings it with it in its wake, it's more important than ever that Parliament holds the executive, of course, and the officials to account. And as the department, as we build a close working relationship with the parliamentary committees, with the objectives of strengthening accountability and service delivery to the public. That's all I can say in terms of the opening, Chairperson. A lot is going to come out of the interaction after the officials led by the DG have been able to present. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for the opening remarks. I think we'll hand over now to the DG. DG, you have 1 hour to present, and then after that we allow members to ask questions, and then we'll receive responses. After that, the Deputy Minister will then make closing remarks, and then we'll be done with the meeting. So that will be the process that will be taken in this meeting. Mercy.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and good afternoon to you and to the honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, and my colleagues. Chair, I was told that the committee secretariat will help us with the uploading of the presentation. Thank you. And can we go straight to slide 8? Can we go to slide 8?
Ms. Matia, can you go to slide 8? Okay.
Enrico's projecting, but there seems to be a problem. Let me just see if I can assist.
Is it possible to give the DG rights so that he can control the presentation from his side?
We can do that if he's comfortable with it.
DG, can they give you the rights so that you can control the process yourself from your side?
I think it is moving now, Chair.
Oh, is it? Okay, sure.
It's moving, yes. All right. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Secretariat. Chair, I'll start with slide 8. The slide 8 is meant as a reminder to the committee of the presentation that we did to the committee, which is Q1 performance of the department. For Q1, our performance was sitting at 83%. And we'll now go to slide 10. Slide 10 depicts our performance for Q2, which was at 87%. We'll go to slide 12. Slide 12 shows, Chair, our performance at Q3, which was at 88%. Slide 14, sorry. Slide 14, Chair, is our Q4 performance. We were sitting at 89%. As you can see from the slide, Chair and honorable members, that in all the other strategic objectives were achieved, with the exception of only 2, which is protecting vulnerable workers, which we performed at 80%, and monitoring the impact of labor legislations, which were sitting at 50%. So out of 19 indicators for Q4, we achieved 17, and we did not achieve 2. And that translates to 89% performance. We can then move to slide 17. Slide 17, Chair, shows the annual performance of the department. We had 19 indicators, we achieved 15, we did not achieve 4. And again, if we go to the strategic goals, there are only 3 indicators that we did not achieve. And one of those is protecting vulnerable workers, 80%, and promoting sound labor relations, where we had 2 indicators that we did not achieve there, and that translated to 33%. Monitoring the impact of legislation, we had 1 indicator that we did not achieve there. That translated to 50% performance. So in total, we did not achieve 4 strategic goals, and that translates to 79 performance. So those 3 areas, those 4 areas of non-achievement, they dropped our performance to 79. If you can see that from Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, we were hovering around 80%. So the next slide will be slide 18. So slide 18 shows the areas where, in terms of the programs, the contribution of the programs and how each program has contributed to the overall performance of the department. The administration achieved all its indicators: inspection and enforcement services, public employment services. The only branch that did not achieve all its indicators is labor policy and industrial relation. We'll go, as we go down, we will indicate the reasons why this branch did not achieve all of its indicators. It achieved 50%, and that dragged us down to 79%. We'll go to slide 19. So in slide 19, we're indicating the contribution of provinces to the overall performance of the inspection and enforcement services. If we look at Q3 and Q4, so you'll realize that in all the slides that we indicated, including slide 17, where we were showing the annual performance of the branch, you'll see that the branch achieved 100%. However, that 100% was as a result of a number of provinces that overperformed, and we have others that contributed less. And I would like to highlight Mpumalanga, for instance, that their performance for Q3 and 4 was consistent at 25%. Northern Cape, 33%, and it went up in Q4, it went up to 50%. So those are the provinces that did not achieve 100% of their planned indicators. Gauteng achieved 75, KwaZulu 75, as I indicated, in Mpumalanga and Northern Cape. The next slide will be slide 20. Slide 20 shows the performance of the contribution of the provinces to the public employment services performance. Again, even though the branch achieved 100% of its targets, there were 2 provinces that did not meet their set targets. KwaZulu-Natal, they achieved 75, Mpumalanga, 75. The next slide will be slide 31. If Chair agrees, slide 31, we're zooming on those areas of non-achievement. We indicated that administration achieved all its targets, and inspection and enforcement services, we indicated that even though they achieved all their targets, there are areas that different provinces did not achieve, and we would like to highlight those. Slide 31 indicates, shows that KZN, for instance, they achieved 43,804. That was their contribution. Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northern Cape. So those provinces did not achieve their targets in as far as the indicator, which talks about the number of employers that are inspected per year to determine compliance with employment law. even though that target was achieved, the target was set at 227,990. The target was achieved. The actual inspections that were done were 227,919. And next slide. The next slide, sorry, the next slide will be slide 33. Again, slide 33, Chair. Here we are showing that even though, again, the target was met, Mpumalanga and Northern Cape did not achieve their target. In fact, you can see that the contribution of Mpumalanga is sitting at 31% and of Northern Cape at 21%. The Inspector General is here. She will take us through in terms of the real reason why these provinces did not perform as far as this area is concerned. Then the next slide will be slide 38. Slide 38 is a public employment services performance. And here we're showing the work seekers that were registered by age groups, and 62% of the work seekers that were registered were young people aged 15 and 35 years. 38% were adult age 36 years and above. And these figures are in line with that of Stats SA's latest QLF, which show high youth unemployment rate. According to the latest QLF 4 of 2019, 41.5% of young people aged 15 and 34 years were unemployed. So what we're indicating here, Chair, is that the administrative data that we have and that we collect as a department is in line with what Stats SA has reported. Next slide. So this next slide shows the work seekers registered by age groups and province. For the ages of 15 and 25, we've registered 221,961. And again, if we take Eastern Cape, they registered 23,777. So that's the breakdown in terms of ages and provinces. The next slide. The next slide shows the work seekers registered by gender. The gender split of work seekers registered is 52% females and 48 males. And again, there's disaggregation in terms of provinces. Next slide. This next slide shows work seekers registered by disability. 0.6 of the work seekers registered on ESA have different forms of disability. We've registered 2,455 work seekers that are blind, and 1,165 that have a physical disability, and 715 that have chronic conditions. Work seekers registered with disability by province. This is just a breakdown of the figures that we showed in the previous slide. This is a breakdown per province. Next slide. This is an indication of the work seekers registered by equity group, because it's important that we track the different groups in terms of the demographics, how many Africans have registered, coloreds and whites and Indians, so that we see if the programs that we design as a result, I mean, having looked at the people who are registered on our work seekers, are targeted to the specific groups. Next slide. So this is reflects the work seekers registered by equity group and province. which is a breakdown of what we spoke about in the previous slide. Next slide. This is just an indication of the work that the branch has done in terms of the areas that they were supposed to do, the targets that they set for the number of employment opportunities that are registered on the employment services system. So that's the annual figure of 90 that was set as a target, and they overachieved that. Next slide. So this next slide shows the opportunities registered by economic sector. Of significance is the opportunities that existed in the manufacturing sector, which is 12,707. The reason why I'm saying they're of significance is that that's the sector that usually carries employment. So if it has large numbers of opportunities, you get excited because you know that a number of people are going to be employed. In fact, I hope that the honorable members, Chair, you've heard that Ford has decided to increase the units that they are producing in South Africa, and that will result in just over 11,000 jobs that will be created. That's what has been announced today, and again, it's in the manufacturing sector. So you would like to have more jobs in the manufacturing sector because they are much more sustainable than any other job opportunities that you find in other sectors. Next slide. This is just the breakdown of these job opportunities per province. Just to give you a sense of how relevant and current these figures are, and they really depict the current situation in the different provinces. If you look at, for instance, agriculture in the Eastern Cape, sitting at 345. Now, if you look at what has been happening in the Eastern Cape in terms of the drought and how the agriculture, that sector, how it was not doing well, and you can see that it's only 345 opportunities were registered with us, and that's in line with all the other statistics that we have or that have been issued, that agriculture has not been doing that well either. Next slide. These are opportunities registered by type. 44% of the opportunities that were registered were formal jobs, and 20% were the labor activation initiated projects, and 21% were projects that were reported to us, and we had to, register those opportunities. 11% were learnerships, and the remaining 3% are split between the internships, apprenticeships, will program, operation Pakistan, and unspecified programs. So what is exciting is that 44% of the opportunities that we register are formal jobs. That's very, very important. Next slide. The opportunities and placement by sector. If you look at this graph, you will see that we have a serious problem with placement. So your opportunities are reflected as blue, and your placement as red. So the only area that we coming close to placing people in terms of the number of opportunities, or placing people equivalent to the number of opportunities registered, is the banking sector, where we had 864 opportunities, we placed 774. And that's largely because in the banking sector, when they recruit people, it sometimes doesn't matter whether you have a degree or not. You start with, they regard as somebody who's got metric, and they will train you, so that you are able to do the work that they want you to do. So that's why we're able to meet that. The rest, we still sitting with the challenge of the skills mismatch, where we have all these opportunities and we have people that we've registered on the system, yet we can't match them because what they have as the opportunities do not talk to one another. Next slide. This is just a breakdown of what we spoke about, opportunities registered by type and province. So it's a breakdown per province. Next slide. This is the number of registered work seekers provided with employment counseling. We have a requirement that we need to counsel these work seekers, and that just reflects that. I would like us to go to slide 33. No, sorry, yeah, slide 33. Yeah, that slide, sorry. No, can we go? Sorry, I confused you. Can we go back to the slide where we were? Yeah, let's move. Next slide, next slide, next slide. Here we're showing the employment counseling by gender and province. Next slide. Employment counseling by equity group and province, as I indicated earlier, the reason why we want to show the equity groups. Next slide. Employment counseling by disability. Here we're showing that only 2% of the registered work seekers received employment counseling, and those have the different forms of disabilities that we spoke about earlier on. Next slide. Yeah, this is a breakdown per province of the previous slide. Next slide. Here we're showing that even though the province achieved all its targets, there were provinces that did not achieve their targets. One of those is KZN, and they had a target of 7,200. They achieved only 6,843. They had a variance of negative 357. Next slide. So again, this is a slide that depicts what we spoke about again earlier on, where we're saying that of the placements, of the job opportunities that we registered, I think 40% of those were formal jobs. Here we're saying that the placement by opportunity type, 49% of the people that were placed on formal jobs, and 27% of those were on projects, and 15% were on UIF lab initiated employment opportunities, and 7% were from the learnerships. Next slide. That's again the provincial disaggregation of the previous slide. Next slide. This is placement by economic sector. You'll remember that we had a slide where we were showing that manufacturing, we registered a lot of opportunities in the manufacturing sector. However, if you look at placement, we've placed more people in the agri sector compared to manufacturing, even though manufacturing is not lagging that that far in terms of placement. We've placed 4,062 in the agricultural sector, and 3,099 in the manufacturing sector. And again, what we're highlighting there is the issue of skills mismatch. A number of work seekers lack the required experience, and unfortunately, companies still require experience before they appoint these these work seekers. Intervention: we're working on profiling of work seekers on the employment services database. We want to dig deeper. Our employment services practitioners they want to have a much more broader understanding of who these work seekers are, so that they're able to assist them. The establishment of employment schemes for the low skills work seekers. We're working on that. We very soon will be coming to the committee to indicate to the committee that we have finalized the employment schemes framework, which will indicate the employment schemes that not only the department but the country will be embarking on. Already some of those schemes are in operations. You'll remember the president announced the employment, the mass employment stimulus. That's part of the employment schemes that we're talking about. Next slide. Here we're showing that the placement by sector and the province. Next slide. And here is a placement by age group. Again, we're placing people between the ages of 15 and 35. That's 69% of the numbers that we've placed. Next slide. That's the breakdown by province. Next slide. That's this placement by gender, which shows that 60% of the people that we've placed are females. And most placements took place in Gauteng, Limpopo, Western Cape, and Eastern Cape. Next slide. Here is just a summary of everything that we've shared with you this far, where we're indicating that the number of work seekers that were registered were just over 929,000, and the work seekers that were provided with counseling were just over 264,000, and the opportunities that were registered on our system were just over 153,000, and these work seekers that were placed are just over 62,000. Can you go back? Yes. And that translates to, in terms of opportunity rate against work seekers, translates to 17%, and placement rate against work seekers registered 7%, and placement rate against registered opportunities is 40%. And we've indicated the breakdown in terms of the provinces. If you look at the graph. Next slide. The next slide is Program 4, Labor Policy and Industrial Relations. Chair, you'll tell me, because I see comments and I'm tempted to respond to them on the chat. So you'll indicate whether I should do that.
No, that would be part of the questions, DG.
Okay.
So you can continue with the presentation.
Thanks. The next slide is an indication of the areas that were achieved. Next slide. Here, this is one of the areas that were not achieved. The review of the national minimum wage by 1st of January 2020. This was not done, and the reason for that is that the National Minimum Commission experienced delays, as there was an unavoidable time lag in the release of the quarterly survey. So they had to wait for Stats SA to release the quarterly labor force survey before they can then work on their report, and they have subsequently done that. but they missed the target. They missed the time frame. Yeah. Next slide. That was achieved. Next slide. This is an area where we deal with the extension of collective agreements, and this is the area that we have not achieved, and that's mainly because of the alignment between the timeframes where we have a target that says we must extend within 90 days. However, there was a requirement that the minister must publicize this, must advertise it on the government gazette, and that takes 30 days. So you have exceeded your 90 days. So there was no alignment between the practice and what's in the law. So for the 2020, we have attempted to align that so that there's no gap. The next slide. So this is the area of where we needed to register 100% of applications that we received, both from the employers and organized labor, where we register trade unions and organized business. We just missed it by 1%. We're sitting at 99%. And again, it has to do with when someone goes on leave, they don't hand over the information to the acting person. So that has since been addressed. Unless we round that 99% chair to 100, if you round off to the nearest 10. Next slide. So that's the area that we have achieved, Chair. Next slide. Next slide. This is another area where we were supposed to have appointed 2 research service providers to do data collection for 1 research study with the RME agenda. Now that was not done, and it had to do with the fact that only 4 evaluation packs out of 5 were finalized. So there were supply chain related issues that the branch had to deal with, and as a result, they failed to meet the timelines, and that's why this target was not achieved. Next slide. So in conclusion, the 2019 annual performance, Chair, as indicated, is sitting at 79%. We're really not happy with that, because we thought that we would now move to beyond 90, and that has been our target. We had 19 indicators, and we achieved 15. We did not achieve 4. The DEL programs have devised strategies to address the performance, and these will continuously monitor to ensure improvement in performance. A number of these improvement strategies have been factored into the annual performance plan for 2020-2021. Monitoring and oversight of performance is prioritized at all levels in the department. Next slide. So then the next slide is expenditure versus performance. So we had an actual expenditure of just over 1.3 billion, and we spent 93.3% of that, and the APP targets achieved were 15%, and that translates to 79%. So you can see that for administration, they spent 97.6% of their target, and they achieved all their targets. Inspection Enforcement Services spent 89.8% of their budget, and they achieved all their targets. Public employment services spent 94.9% of their budget, and they achieved all their targets. With labor policy and industrial relations spending 88.7%, and achieved only half of their targets, with only 4 targets that were not achieved. Next slide. So this is just the reflection of the legends that you are using, Chair. I'm going to ask Mr. Mrotoba to quickly, I'm going to ask the Chief Financial Officer to talk to the audit matters, Chairperson. And then Mr. Mrotoba will then do the presentation for SCE.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
You had earlier also indicated, DG, that the Inspector General should come. Maybe we should start with the Inspector General.
I said, Chair, she will then take questions.
Or take questions. I thought you said that there was something that she was going to explain. Okay, no, I'm with you. Okay. All right.
Mr. Matuna?
Oh.
Mr. Peki Matuna? Can we take off this presentation? There's a one on the audit.
Chair, thanks, DG.
Ms. Matia, can you share this one that is talking about Vote 28, 2019-2020 appropriation statement? Is that the one, DG?
Yes, that's the one, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. You can continue, Mr. Maduna. Yeah, can you unmute? Mr. Maduna, you are muted. Okay. And can you also put on your camera? This meeting is live on 408.
Chair, is it okay?
Yeah, we can see you. Yes.
Thanks, Chair. Can we move to the next slide? Chair, I'm going to kick off with the audit outcomes of 2019-20 financial year. As the Minister indicated earlier on, we have received an unqualified audit opinion on the regularity audit, with no emphasis of matter issued by the AG. Only the issues on the management report that need some attention. Next slide. The DG has indicated on this slide the financial performance of the whole program. Let's maybe move to the next one. I'm gonna then deal with the major reasons for the variances per main divisions of the vote, starting with administration. The administration had a variance of 81.8 million underspending, which I think the first one being 9.9 million on compensation of employees, goods and services 69 million as a result of delays in payments of the computer services, property payments, and the capital expenditure of just about 2.7 million as a result of payment of delayed payments for buildings and other fixed features. Next slide. The reasons for underspending under inspection and enforcement services, the amount that was not spent is 70.9 million, with the breakdown as follows: compensation of employees, 52.8 million as a result of vacancies, goods and services, 3.9 million as a result of lower than anticipated expenditure on venues and facilities, and the capital expenditure of 4.3 million as a result of delay in procurement of other machinery and equipment. Next slide. Public employment services, their underspending was 23.1 million, comprising of compensation of employees of 15.4 million as a result of vacancies, transfer payments of 2.3 million. Non-profit institutions did not take up the subsidy that was allocated, that was available for them to apply for. And the last one being the capital expenditure of 5.1 million as a result of delayed procurement of other machinery and other equipment. Next slide. Labor policy and industrial relations, their underspending was 41.5 million, comprising of compensation of employees of 12.3 million as a result of vacancies, goods and services of 27.6 million as a result of less than anticipated expenditure on advertising, as well as consultant services and travel and subsistence. The last one being transfer payments of 1.4 million due to the fluctuations in exchange rate relating to payments that we may make to the overseas institution, international organization, I think ILO to be exact. The next slide. I think the next slide is a graphical representation of what I have presented. Can we then move to the next one? This one look at expenditure information per economic classification, which still indicates the total amount of the total expenditure of 93.7, which gives us the total expenditure of 93.7, which gives us the inverse of it, give the under expenditure that I've just explained of 6.3%. Next slide. Next slide as well. This slide, we normally want to look at the expenditure that is directly linked to the department, taking away the transfers and subsidies to our entities, which means that our expenditure is 89.8%. That is, the department is responsible for, other than the transfers that we make to our entities of 1.8 billion. Next slide. Expenditure on the compensation of employees only. Administration spent 97.6% of their compensation of employees budget. IES 89.8% on the compensation of employees. Public employment services 94.9% expenditure, and LPN IR recorded an expenditure of 88.7%. The total expenditure on compensation of employees was 93.3%. Next slide. This is the expenditure that is per office, which indicate that on all our provincial offices, the total expenditure was 96% against their allocation of 1.4 billion that was allocated. 1.4 billion that was allocated to them. They spent just about 1 billion, which equates to 96%. Next slide. That was the expenditure all per program on provinces. MSS, the expenditure was 100%. These are the operations that support the provincial office. So we managed to spend all the money. The provinces managed to spend all the money that was allocated to them. Next slide. Expenditure on IES per province. On IES, the expenditure was 88%, and there are figures for each province on how they have performed. Next slide, which is public employment services. The expenditure on public employment services in the province was 93%, with all the percentages for the provinces. Next slide. LP and IR in the provinces, their financial performance was 95%, with all the percentage for all the provinces on how they performed. The next slide indicates the audit findings by the AG in our management report. Financial management had some findings of 2023 findings, wherein human resource had 8 findings. CIO, Office of the CIO had 20. Risk, anti-corruption and integrity management, they had 7 findings in total. Our findings in our management report was 58. That's a consolidated findings for all the provinces, for the Department of Labor, including the provincial offices. I think that comes to the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Is there any other report, DG?
The SCE chairperson, Mr. Mrotoba, will quickly do that.
Oh, okay. Over to you, Mr. Sam Mrotoba.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson and members. I'll wait for the presentation to be shown. If we can go to the next slide, I'm going to cover 3 things: the performance and how we performed against the. Sorry, can you go back to slide number 2? Slide number 2. The next one. Yes, move on. They seem to have mixed up the presentation. Chair.
Yeah.
Can you? Yes. I think on the audit outcomes, as issued by the AG, we were found wanting in a number of areas. The first one was on the inventory. We received a qualification in this area. And this has to do with the large number of assets that we have and the CISPRO system that we are currently using, which is very, very old. And we have since made some interventions to have this IT system improved, because it kept on losing a lot of information and in the process caused a lot of problems with the AG. On the cost of sales, this Honorable Chairperson has to do with the process that we normally follow when we determine the cost of the units that we manufacture. We have a situation where we would normally at the beginning of each year submit a list signed by the Director General for approval by the National Treasury. However, as and when we receive orders, you'll find that the price of material, especially like last year during the COVID environment, the various service providers will normally increase their prices tremendously, and the prices that we charge would not normally be in line with the sales, and we received the qualifications around that. On the property, plant, and equipment, it has to do with the machinery that we have. Some are very old, but they are still in use. And the AG here wanted us to put a useful life and a price for each machine. And we followed a process that we couldn't agree because of what was given. I see that the presentation keeps on moving. If you can move on to the next slide.
Can we go to slide 10 of the presentation, please? Can you share the screen?
Jay, we are busy. Jay, we're busy. We're busy resolving this issue now. We'll be there. Just give us a minute.
Okay. Slide 10.
Chairperson, in summary, I can indicate that we had 2 indicators. Out of the 2, we received 50%. And the one indicator on increasing the number of people with disability, the target was 150. We ended the financial year with 64. And partly the problem had to do with the fact that we could not acquire work in other areas. As for sales, we managed to achieve the target. We finished the financial year at 10%, and that is because of the outstanding orders that we had to produce, but also because we had in storage large volumes of especially textiles that were bought by the various hospitals in a rush at the end of before the end of the financial year, and that managed to bring a lot of revenue within the SEE. Yeah, this is the correct presentation. Okay, and the slide gives a summary in terms of the total number of people that we employed in the various factories. And you will notice, honorable members, that previously, where we had these factories being predominantly white, we still have a challenge, but that challenge is now limited to specific areas like Port Elizabeth. We still need to do a lot of work there to try and balance the demographics, and within the Rand factory in Gauteng. But in most cases, we have moved, and you can see also in terms of the gender balance. If we can move on to the next slide. This is the slide I was talking to, that out of the 150, we achieved 64, and we managed to achieve more on the sales. If we can move on. This is again is the summary of the breakdown of the information, because as we increase the number of people, what the slide shows you is the total number of people we had as at 31st of March 2019, and the additional people that we have employed as at 31st March 2020, increasing our total. Honorable members may be aware that these factories, with work given to them, we can increase the capacity to beyond 3,000, and now with the addition of the factory in Seshego, and still a factory to be established in Mpumalanga, if we receive a lot of income, because we don't get additional budget for such activities. We have to do them from the sales that we generate. Obviously, we can increase the number of people that we are employing. If you can move on to the next slide. Now, this is that breakdown. I've already covered this one. If you can move on. There seems to be something wrong with the presentation, Chairperson.
I think what is happening, the other one talks to performance, And then this one now talks to the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Move on.
I think there are two reports in one. I think the other one talks to the performance and the performance report, and then the one that you say is confusing you talks to the audited annual financial statements. So there's no confusion, Mr. Morito. So we can get to this one now. You've done the performance report, but now this one talks to the audited. But you did touch on some areas on this one that we are getting to, but the problem is that then the slide then disappeared. So that's why I was saying that on this one, which is the audited annual financial statement, she must then move to slide number 10, because that's when it then disappeared. If Mr. Madia, you can go to slide number 10, that is where the problem started. Slide number 10. Then you can take, this is a slide that you're supposed to take us through. And then we move towards the end.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Honorable Chairperson. This slide gives you an indication of our audited financial statements. The first part was giving you areas where we have been qualified. But the revenue, you will notice that in 2019, we were at 76.7 and we moved to 128 million. And on the cost of sales, you will notice the 227 million and the gross deficit of 99.2 in 2020 against 92.8 in 2019. Now, the overall revenue from non-exchange transactions was at 148.9 in 2020, whereas we were at 136.7 in 2019. And we ended the financial year with an operating surplus of 1.6, whereas in 2019, we had a deficit of about 11.4 million. And at the end of the process, our bank balance was standing at 912,000, which we had to go to National Treasury to apply to carry that into the new financial year. And unlike the previous years where we used to have large reserves, a lot of investment was made in the capital expenditure where new machineries were bought for all the factories to replace some of the aging machines, by making sure that we also don't displace existing staff, but at the same time improving the quality of the products. And each factory also received a new truck so that we reduce drastically the dependency on private companies that were charging us a lot of money for transporting the goods that we produce. So in brief, Chairperson, the entity's financials improved due to the sales. And although we had this deficit in the surplus and deficit in the previous year as part of the accounting principles, the surplus indicates that we are an organization that is of going concern. And if we can go to the last slide, the next slide, you can skip that one also because it captures that. Again, just before that, this also gives you a breakdown in terms of the cost, where the bulk of the money went. On the cost of employees at 180.9, the depreciation and amortization of our assets at 4.3, the finance cost in terms of AG and having to get additional people to assist, we spent 178,000. The lease rentals, mainly to public works and municipalities, 536, and general expenses that include the support staff that are part of DEL, where DEL pays them and claim those costs at 98.1 million. If we can move on. I think in conclusion, Chairperson, the entity, like we said, has the potential to grow. The challenge is still the low customer base. I think the Minister, DG, and Deputy Minister did their best in assisting us to market the entities and impressing upon other government departments to procure goods and services from the entity. However, this is still unsatisfactory, and that is why we are looking at diversifying the products that we produce. We are targeting the external markets, and part of the COVID, we produced goods that we sold even to private individuals as part of reducing the reliance. And we are hoping that with the new intervention that Treasury is bringing for set aside for people with disability, entities like SEEs will be protected and will benefit from that. And that will see us expanding to Mpumalanga and also increasing the number of people with disabilities employed in these factories. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muratoba. DG, if you can round up, and then after that, we allow members to ask questions.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think we're done with our presentation. We will take questions from the honourable members. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG. Honourable members, it's time to ask questions. Are there any hands, Ms. Matia?
Hi, Chair. Honourable Brotasef has raised a hand, and I've got three quick. Brotasef has raised a hand.
Okay.
Mr. Moimang has raised a hand, and Honourable Matabula has also put in 3 questions in the message chat, which I will read out.
DG, you'll take note of those questions that are on the chat.
We've taken note of them, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. Honourable Tim.
My Chair, it is good to see you again.
Thank you.
We missed you for such a long time. I'm glad you are slowly recovering your health, and I wish you all strength.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I've got a very bad signal, so I'm not going to turn my camera on, but I will be very brief. I'm advised that my colleague Sonia Boshoff, who is our specialist in this area, has submitted written questions to the department. So I'm sure they will get them and receive them. Chair, you will remember that we visited the factory in Cape Town of the last entity that was discussed, and at that stage we obviously made a recommendation that departments should really try and procure from that entity. I'm sad to see that nothing really has moved. We have not moved the needle there. And I'm wondering if as a committee we can somehow form a resolution that we ask all departments to make it a mandatory that they procure the goods that the entity produces. To make it a mandatory that they procure. Sorry, Chair, there's a bit of an echo, but I really think that it wouldn't be far-fetched for us to consider such a resolution. Sorry, Chair, there's a bit of an echo.
Sorry, Honourable Tim. Zwele, can you please mute your... Honourable Tim. Zwele, can you please mute? Yes. Okay, sorry, Mr. Tim. Can you then continue, please?
Yes, Chair. I just thought it would be sensible for us as a committee, even just as a statement of intent.
Yeah.
We all visited that factory. We all saw the amazing work being done by the entity, and that we make a recommendation that departments should be, or make a recommendation to the executive that they consider making it mandatory for perhaps even a percentage of their procurement of office furniture and whatever else the entity produces, that they invest a percentage with this entity.
intergovernmental relations are key, and I just feel that we visited there. We agreed that this entity should be supported because it supports people with disabilities, and perhaps we should make recommendations to the executive that at least there's a resolution that a percentage of their procurement is done from this entity. I really feel strongly that we should try and support this entity as much as we possibly can. That is all I wanted to comment on, Chair. Thank you, and once again, good to see you again.
Thank you very much, honourable team, and appreciate. We did table to the House a report of our visit to the SEE that is based in Cape Town, and also the recommendations. What we also indicated in the report was that we need to invite the departments that are relevant, that can assist the SEE, including the Treasury. The meeting there was convened. Unfortunately, that was during the period I contracted the COVID. So I was not part of the meeting, but I'm aware that there were departments that attended, small business, also the NEF was one of the entities that attended. Treasury, I understand that they sent an apology. Perhaps it's a matter that we need to follow up. Honorable Mwimang is going to be the next. Maybe he could also touch on the perhaps the outcome of that particular meeting. I think also the department was present. Maybe when the department then table its annual performance plan, it will also indicate whether since that meeting, whether there has been any assistance from the departments that were invited and entities that were invited. To what extent are they assisting the SEE? Over to you, Honorable Mwimang.
Thank you, Chair. Let me again take this opportunity to express my appreciation from the leadership of the department, in particular the Minister and the team, for this comprehensive presentation on its annual report. And indeed, you are correct, Chair. There was a commitment from the meeting that we had with the department and other sister departments, including small business, trade, and competition, on the support that could be given to the entity. I want to believe that what will be left will be from our side actions, those commitment, and then engage with the department so that the commitments that were made by the sister departments must be able to be infused in our way forward in terms of strengthening the work of the SEE. I said, secondly, Chair, one of the things that is emerging from the report, one will definitely not be confined to the figures around the governance and issues that were raised by the AG, both in terms of irregular expenditure. The numbers gives comfort, but I think of critical importance is reasons that were advanced by the AG to the department in terms of what might have caused the irregular expenditure. Among the issues that is emerging is the issue of adherence to procurement and contract management. Probably it would be comforting to get a sense from the department in terms of clear concrete measures that the department is putting in place to address the concerns raised by the AG around this issue of irregular expenditure. But more than that, the concerns raised by the AG with regard to the risk management and governance of the supported employment enterprise, because the view that the AG has expressed is that the SEE was found to be inadequately equipped to implement preventative measures, and it then raises the issue of the adequacy of the support in terms of for those identified risk management solutions. So it will be important just to get a sense from the management side. How are they addressing this issue? The third point, Chair, with regard to the implementation of the national minimum wage, particularly its review that was targeted for completion on the 1st of January 2020. If one could just get a sense from the management in terms of their broad the understanding of the review of the national minimum wage implementation. Of importance will be what are those sectors of the economy that will benefit from this review. But more than that, what is the impact? And it will be important to get a sense in terms of the sectors across the provinces, so that at least from where we come from as the NCOP members, we have an impression in terms of the success or the hurdles or the challenges that are encountered in those economic sectors, because I think key to this is the compliance of the employers around the implementation of the national minimum wage. One of the issues also that that attracted my attention, Chair, is around the matter that speaks to the inspection and enforcement services, which in terms of the presentation made, particularly the provincial spread of the inspected employers and compliance variables. One get a sense that there are certain provinces where this matter is it's an area of concern. KZN, Northern Cape, are provinces that seems to be an area of concern in terms of the provincial targets that had to be inspected, and how this inspection found a reflection in terms of contribution to the target set by the department. If one could probably just get a sense in terms of this area, because it is important to understand that this area is very important in terms of our achievement of the creation of decent work, and it therefore becomes important that conditions around which this aspect is taking place. From the inspectorate side, one get a sense in terms of whether is there compliance. Of course, mindful of the fact that a point was made around the acquisition or the employment of the additional 500 new inspectors. How will these 500 inspectors, how will it be spread across provinces? Just to get a sense in terms of whether provinces where inspection has been an area of concern will be covered. But other than that, Chair, the last point will be an area that I came across. I think is the approach that the department made to Treasury in terms of requesting a deviation around a baseline study on silicosis project, particularly given the fact that there has been a delay with regard to bringing this matter to finality on the open bidding process on the last two occasions due to non-suitability of potential service providers. So it will be important just to get a sense as to why would Treasury decline an intervention after the open bidding has failed. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moimang, for the questions. Are there any other members who want to ask questions? Okay, it doesn't seem like. Maybe from me, DM and DG and DDGs, perhaps on the IES, particularly with provinces' performance. If DG, there are provinces that are able to achieve 100%, but others are achieving far less. What is it that has been done to ensure that going forward, all the provinces are able to achieve 100%, particularly if that 100% is achievable by other provinces. On the public employment, I just want DG to find out whether you do have a data. I know that you've broken down the issue of opportunities and placement per sectors. But when you look at the public sector, numbers are very, very low. Yet sometimes it is said that public sector is the biggest employer, particularly in most provinces. I don't know if you have a breakdown. I know you've broken it down per sectors. If perhaps you could further break it down per departments and government entities. To what extent are they placing the work seekers from your system? But also, if you could also break it further than just the sectors with regard to the kind of skills that are in your database that particularly government entities and the local government in particular could assess from. I'm raising this point because particularly with local government, municipalities would complain about capacity, that they don't have capacity. On the other hand, you have work seekers. That's why I'm saying perhaps if we can break it down into what kind of skills of people that are in the database in terms of work seekers. I know of one municipality, I'm not going to mention a name, where in a particular directorate on health services and environment, for instance, a nursing sister was employed as a head of the directorate. When you have people with degrees around the issue of environment that could do that particular work and head those particular departments. And also, to what extent are the provinces also linking up with provinces and municipality and indicate the kind of skills that they have in the database of the department, so that as the departments and the municipality require those kind of skills, you upfront, you've been able to indicate to them the kind of skills that you have in the database. Because I think for me that it is a concern. So I wish that we could further break down as to what departments from time to time go to your database and then seek those kind of skills that you have in the database, so that government should set an example. Government department must set an example, so that when you have this database as a government department, sister departments also make use of the database in addition to other sectors that require those kind of skills. But government department must champion, because they have a responsibility to ensure that jobs are created, people get employed. Yeah. The other issue I wanted to raise has to do with the program that is with the labor policy and the IR. There have been DG and the Deputy Minister complaints that we're receiving, particularly from labor, that there would be bills that are discussed at the level of NETLEC, and they get concluded at the level of NETLEC. But it would take years for those bills and to come to Parliament. So there has been that complaint on the. So I thought that I must use this opportunity to raise those concerns. For example, Labour raising the issue of the ILO convention. Convention 190, that has not been brought to the attention of Parliament for ratification. They raised the issue of the COIDA bill. That has not been, I'm not sure, because I've been away. It could be that these issues I'm raising have now been to Parliament. The occupational safety and health bill, they indicate that has not been brought to Parliament. As I'm indicating that it could be during the period that I was away, perhaps those bills are now with Parliament. So I thought, let me just raise those concerns that are raised by stakeholders that we interact with as a committee that falls under the program labor policy and industrial relations. Thank you very much, DG and the Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, you will conclude. Let's allow the DG to respond to the question, including those that are on the chat.
Okay, Chair.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to ask my colleagues to respond to the questions, and then I'll just summarize, Chair. I'm going to ask the Inspector General to attend to all questions relating to inspection and enforcement services. Mr. Mrotoba will deal with the SEE, and Mr. Seafield will deal with the national minimum wage and labor market policy issues. In that order, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can we start, Inspector General?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think I'm going to start off with the issue around performance. There were a few provinces that were flagged in terms of their failure to achieve their targets. MP, Northern Cape, I think KZN and GP as well. So I'm just going to give a summarized version of the reasons why.
Sorry.
Number one.
Sorry, Inspector, are you able to switch on your camera? As I was indicating, meeting it live on 4.8.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Chair.
Yes.
Okay. I was still on the issue of flagging reasons why there were issues of underperformance by various provinces. Let me start with Northern Cape and Mpumalanga because their reasons are kind of similar. I think the biggest challenge there was that we had a leadership challenge in terms of inspection enforcement services. For Mpumalanga, for instance, the provincial chief inspector was on an extended sick leave for almost a period of 6 to 7 months. So that had a dire effect on the performance of the province itself. Also, given the fact that during the performance period, we also had to look at readjusting our performance strategies in line with challenges that were presented by the COVID-19 challenges. And the same with Northern Cape, there were issues of employment relations challenges with the provincial chief inspector, and some of them are still being handled. And that, as I said earlier, had an adverse outcome with regards to the achievement of the majority of the targets. The other reason, particularly affecting KZN and GP, the combination of factors. First of all, there were vacancies that are key. Like you'll find that in instances where there's a vacancy of a specialist, for example, if you have a statutory services person who wouldn't be there, it affects the work of that province because you'll find that it will just be that one individual that does the work. The same goes for occupational health and safety work. You'll find that in some provinces, that this is before we completely recruited the 500 additional posts. You'll find that in some small provinces in particular, if there's a vacancy of one OHS inspector, the whole region will be affected given the nature of the post itself. So there had been vacancies that were key in nature that kind of affected the work itself. And the other reason that also affected some provinces more than others is the issue of COVID-related occurrences. You'll find that in some provinces we had offices closing down because they would have been affected, and that would mean that staff will go for quarantine and so on. I can give an example of GP where they had a meeting, and in that meeting, almost all the inspectors were there. And a few days later, one of the inspectors tested positive for COVID, and the rest of them had to self-quarantine, and that slowed down the work itself. In terms of what is it that we did or is being done, in all the instances we had catch-up strategies that were submitted, and these are supported by both the office of the COO as well as my office chair. So I hope that suffices. And the second question that I'd like to respond is a question that was on the chat. The question was seeking to know what number of the number of farms inspected in Limpopo province. Chair, I do not have that information offhand. We can, however, submit that information at a date that will be suggested and suitable for the committee. And then the other question that was raised was around issues of compliance generally, and specifically with the national minimum wage. If you look at the number of inspections that we carried out in the financial year under review, in total, we conducted 228,000 inspections, and the compliance rate thereof was 95%, with 5% non-compliance. And if I was to specifically talk to the national minimum wage issue, we conducted in excess of 166,000 inspections with a compliance rate of 97%. Chair, in that time, we're able also to recover an amount of 105 million in underpayments. So this money is money that was given back to the employees that were affected. And the last thing that I'm going to respond to has got to do with the spread regarding the 500 OHS inspections in various provinces. Chair, let me start by indicating that how the spread was done was based on the need. It was also based on economic activity, as well as we also looked at the nature of work and also what we call high risk sectors and so on. So all those issues were taken into consideration in determining, first of all, the numbers and the nature of OHS inspectors that will be required by various provinces. So just to give you an example, for instance, for Northern Cape, out of the 500, they got allocated 25 OHS inspectors. Previously, they had only about 8 inspectors, so the additional 25 will make a difference. Western Cape were provided 58 more, Gauteng 80 plus more, KZN about 110 and so on, Chair. I do have the exact figures, but I was just giving those figures as in a nutshell of what has been what was happening in that space of OHS inspections in terms of the 500. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Inspector General, the COVID-19 cannot be the excuse for poor performance, because we're dealing here with 2019, 2020 performance report. That means the report, we're talking about the performance that started on the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. Lockdown was declared on the 27th of March 2020, 3 days before the end of the financial year. So the performance or poor performance in some provinces cannot be attributed to the COVID-19 or lockdown. So I just wanted to indicate that part. Mr. Muratoba.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me start by apologizing on the presentation. I have checked with the Chief Operations Officer, and we have noticed that there was a mistake when they sent the presentation, but she has since corrected that, and the presentation that I have is what you will have. Chairperson, we welcome the visit, but I would have loved that during the constituency period and during our oversight period, we do not only have the factory on the doorstep of Parliament. There are still others, and there are still people with disabilities. Your visit and your mere presence motivates them quite a lot, because as we speak, they are watching you in Parliament. And as you mentioned, the name of the factories that they work in, they feel very proud, and they know that there are people who care about them. And so please feel free to visit others anytime you would wish. As for the improvement by government departments in terms of procurement, I know we're talking about 2019 to 2020. In 2020-21, we have not seen much improvement. We had hoped that with the COVID and with the kind of products we produce, especially for the hospital linen, with the expansion of hospitals, when procurement was still done by national department, it was very, very, very much better. And we used to have huge contracts that the national department will then procure and distribute to province. But the minute they devolved the responsibilities to provinces, it has been an uphill, and currently the support is coming mainly from the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape. And what it does is that we end up having to incur a lot of expenses because we distribute the work that is supposed to go to those two provinces in the main throughout our all other factories, so that we avoid a situation where we have people idling. I've held a number of meetings with the provincial governments where we then indicated to them that if the situation does not improve, we will recommend to our minister, including ourselves, to review the continued existence of some of the factories in some provinces, because I'm facing already a serious problem with the AG, where they are now auditing me based on the income that each factory generates vis-a-vis what we pay and the income that we generate in each province, despite all our marketing interventions that we've put in place. On the governance, Honorable Tim, the issues raised are legitimate. I must say that out of the 6 managers that we have at the SCE, 5 of them are either in the acting or in transition. Myself, the CFO, the other 2 managers were transferred from the compensation fund, and the other manager has been on extended sick leave. So the AG felt that that situation needs to be corrected. There is a process underway to fill the position of a CEO. We advertised previously, we couldn't find a suitable candidate. I'm there in the entity, but I also, over and above my responsibility, have to assist in the area, and the AG felt that we need to correct that as part of proper governance. And at the same time, myself and the DG discussed this matter, and we couldn't leave the entity without leadership. It's strenuous, but we have to do that until we get a suitable replacement. We lost the CFO, and we have a person acting, and we revised the structure in line with the adjustments that we have, and we will sort out the internal processes so that we can confirm the transferred people, so that it assists us in the administration. The entity does not have a board. It's not in line with the Act. However, we recommended that we have some kind of a body that will serve in the advisory capacity and will draw on people with disability from social development so that they can advise on a number of issues. Currently, we do invite them, but it's ad hoc, and we will formalize that. The question on placement by public sector, I think there are 2 issues here. With the department, we agreed to recruit from levels 1 to 8. We do have, Honorable Chairperson, policies and regulation in the public service that guides the recruitment in line with the Public Service Act. And we also have agreements that have been entered or concluded with the trade unions that also outline how recruitment should happen. So whilst there is partly usage of ESSA, it is still limited, it is still confined to lower level areas because of the reasons that I've mentioned, and hopefully as the system people get used to, because the private sector, and the reason why they're using it is because they cut time in terms of having to fill positions. It is done free to them, and the speed at which we do it, we give them within a week 5 candidates. They only have to appoint 1 person. They don't lose production time. They fill the position. So that's why we are getting traction and support in that area, whereas processes in the public sector take long. In terms of the number of, that is the skills levels in the database, we do have that. It is in line with the organizational framework for occupations, and we will produce slides that indicates the kind of people that we have. And we also have medical doctors, Honorable Chairperson, and some institutions are using that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morodo. Mr. Sefield?
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members. The question relates to the delay in processing bills to Parliament. Chair, the 3 areas which you have highlighted. One, can I just mention that the ILO Convention 190 on harassment in the world of work has been approved by Cabinet late last year, and that will only be approved for passage to Parliament, and we will then that has been submitted to Parliament already, and Convention 190 will then be dealt with as soon as we have this. Chair, I just want to also raise the issue of the delayed passage of these bills to Parliament. You would recall, Chair, that all of these bills, there's a requirement that we do a complete socio-economic impact assessment on these bills, and the socio-economic impact assessment is done on the finalized discussions, finalized bills that come out of NEDLAC. So we have to deal with those issues in the context of the process that we have to follow post the NEDLAC process going to Parliament. So while there's been a number of delays in our processes, for example, a change in administration with respect to the occupational health and safety bill, etc., it becomes a process that these bills needs to follow through the departmental governmental process, through the cabinet, as well as the parliamentary process, having been tabled in Parliament after that process. So, Chair, whilst some of these bills, the occupational health and safety bill, as an example, took some inordinate time to come to Parliament, a process that we need to follow in relationship to finalizing these bills and making it ready for Parliament. For example, having a complete socio-economic impact assessment report for Parliament. These take some time to complete, and therefore, whilst they have been finalized at NEDLAC, it takes some time to come to Parliament on the basis of that understanding, Chair. Chair, I hope I've answered the question, and these bills and the ratification of the convention has been processed by Cabinet, and they will be dealt with Parliament in relationship to the parliamentary processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Back to you, DG. I don't know if there were questions to the CFO before the DG. Are there any questions to the CFO that you need to respond to?
Thanks, Chair. No, there were no questions other than the comment on irregular expenditure that was cited by an honourable member that we needed to look into. Thanks, Chair.
All right. Back to you, DG. If you want to round up.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I think that a couple of questions that my colleagues did not respond to. One of those questions was the issue relating to what are we doing to deal with irregular expenditure as a result of not adhering to supply chain management processes. We firstly, Chair, we as a department, as much as we appreciate the fact that we received an unqualified audit opinion from AG, we're not happy that there are a number of areas that are still, are still persisting, and one of those areas, the area raised by Honorable Moimang on the issue of supply chain. And this is the area that we're trying our best to address as we, move forward to an era of a clean audit. We're looking forward to that. So we're addressing a number of these things as we move along, and of course, also each and every occurrence is investigated. And if there's a need for us to take disciplinary action, we do that, so that can serve as some form of a deterrent. And again, we have amended our supply chain policies to put a requirement for what we call a property audit in instances where we've issued out tenders. We need to have that independent person who's going to sit and look at the entire process and make recommendations to the bid adjudication committee in terms of how the process was followed, so that they can have another quality assurance sort of a provider who will give them that assurance that everything was done according to the prescripts, and no service provider was prejudiced during the evaluation, and also prejudiced by the specification that was sent out. So those are the gaps. That's how we're trying to close the gaps to make sure that we deal with the irregular expenditure. There's also another question on the National Minimum Wage Commission work that Mr. Seffield did not respond to, around our broad understanding of the review of the national minimum wage and the sectors to benefit from the national minimum wage. So the broad review of the national minimum wage, as prescribed by the national minimum wage legislation, is that the commission must look at a number of things. One, the state of the economy, and secondly, how the inflation, and thirdly, make sure that they protect the value of the minimum wage. So in reviewing the minimum wage, those are the factors that they must take into, and of course, the ability of the employers to afford to pay the national minimum wage. So those are the broad areas that they must cover when they review the national minimum wage. So you'll remember that one of the biggest areas that were highlighted that will benefit from the national minimum wage is the farming sector and the hairdressing and saloons, where we took them from 6 rands to 20 rands, and now with the increase in the national minimum wage, their position has also improved. So those are the sectors that are benefiting, and what we're also happy with is that this has become a benchmark, for setting wages, because you can't go below the national minimum wage. And of course, in those sectors where you still have a wage set below the national minimum wage, our inspectors, when they get aware of that, they pounce in and make sure that things are corrected. So the impact across the provinces, our assessment, Chairperson, is that the introduction of the national minimum wage has helped, even though we are of the view that in some of the in the wholesale, I mean in the restaurants, you still find a situation where employees are still paid on a commission basis. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the commission basis, because the rule is that if you don't meet the target, you must at least be given the national minimum wage. Now, where it becomes a problem is when the employees are paid using, tips that they've been given by by the clients. Now, a tip is not meant to be used as part of the wages. A tip is an appreciation of the good service that one has received, and it's subjective, because I may be happy and one person may not be happy, and therefore you cannot rely on that, as a payment for wages. This issue of silicosis project that Honorable Moimang raised, we'll follow up on that, because I don't have full information as far as that this matter is concerned as to why National Treasury rejected the request for a deviation. We'll follow up on that. On the 500 OHS inspection posts, we are now sitting at almost 90% of the posts being filled. One of the challenges that we're experiencing is that you'll find that people are appointed by more than one province, so because they apply to more than one province, and so you get appointed here, and your preference is Gauteng, and once the results of the recruitment process are out in Gauteng, and you learn that you've been appointed, you then move here, you go there, and sometimes we need to start the whole process from scratch, and that's why we're sitting at just over 90% instead of 100%. So just on the areas that Chair you raised with regards to the bills, we keep our social partners informed of what we are doing every step of the way. I'll give you an example of the OHS bill. The OHS bill went to Parliament in the previous administration. It was one of those bills that the previous administration could not finalize, and it was then sent back. Now, when we inquired, we were told that we need to start the process from scratch. So it had to go to the economic cluster, it had to go to cabinet. So it's following those processes, and we have kept our social partners aware of where the processes are. Well, I think that if we delay in submitting the bills to Parliament, we always tell them that there's always a plausible reason for doing that. We just don't put these things in our drawers and decide that no, we're not going to send them to Parliament. But we understand the urgency on their part. We do our best to make sure that these are processed timeously. On the issue of poor performance, Chair, this question, the committee asked us this question, I think, at some point, and I indicated, if my memory serves me well, that we engage with all the provinces that are not doing well, and the catch-up plan is put in place. And if we're not happy with the catch-up plan, we take steps. For instance, I have issued some of the provincial managers with warning letters that if they don't check up their performance, steps will be taken against them. So far, because that's the first step that you take when you apply consequence management. So that's where we are, and the expectation is that with the catch-up plans that they've put in place, performance will improve, because we monitor performance on a on a regular basis as a department. Chair, the last point on working with other government departments to use both the SEE and also the employment services, the employment services system that we have. Mr. Mrotoba has indicated that we have, we haven't had much success in terms of support from other government departments with regards to support for SEE, and we would really appreciate your intervention for the survival of these entities, because I think that these factories play a very important role in making sure that disabled people continue to play a role in the labor market. On the use of employment services system by government departments, we have written to all government departments, indicating to them that this is not the Department of Labor system. It is the employment services system for South Africa, and therefore it's a system that must be used by. It's a government system. It's not our system as a department. It's a government system, and it has to be utilized by government department. Otherwise, the investment that we made in developing the system would be fruitless expenditure if government is not using its very own system. We're happy that then there are a number of departments that are sourcing people from us for learnerships, for public employment, public works programs, and we're happy that. But we would like to see this system being a system that is used by government on a much wider scale compared to what we're experiencing today. Thank you very much, Chair, and to the honourable members.
Thank you very much. I don't want to put you on the spot, DG. I remember in one meeting you offered your services, particularly with regard to social development. I think SASSA, with regard to this issue of the 350, but your offer was declined. I would have loved to ask you, what is your assessment in terms of how the work by SASSA in supported by South African post offices, whether they're doing better or you would have done better, but I don't want to put you on the spot on that one. Honorable members, if there are any follow-up questions.
Okay. Further question from Mr. Apleni.
Okay. Is it on the chat, or does he want to?
No, you send it separately to the open chat. If I can just read it out.
Oh, okay. Please read it out.
There has been many complaints that we have received as EFF labor desk from workers concerning the issue of inspectors who are not doing the work, and some accused of taking bribes from employers. What is the department doing to ensure that such concerns are properly addressed? Secondly, there is a concern about the CCMA dragging in handling and speedily dealing with the cases of some employers. This is especially rife in the Nelson Mandela Bay. Is your department aware of such? If yes, what is the department doing to address this? If no, can the department make such a follow-up on these issues?
I don't know if you managed to get them, because I think Matia's audio is quite bad.
The last part, Chair, on the CCMA, I didn't get it.
Okay. Can you repeat, Ms. Matia? The last part on CCMA?
Oh, the last part on CCMA, sorry. There's a concern about the CCMA dragging its feet in handling and speedily dealing with the cases of some employers. This is especially in the case right in the Nelson Mandela Bay. Is your department aware of this? If yes, what is the department doing to address this? If no, can the department make such a follow-up on these issues?
You got it, DJ?
Chair, can you write it down on the chat? I can't.
Yeah, Ms. Pate, where did you get it? Because it's not on the chat.
No, you sent it to me separately, Chair. You sent it to me privately. I don't know why it's not going through. I'm going to try and put it in the chat.
Sorry?
I'm going to try and put it in the chat.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know, because I also didn't get the question, but I'm not sure if you are able to respond, DG. But before that, can we just check if other members have follow-up questions? Not. I think Honorable Tim had indicated earlier that Honorable Boshoff has sent written questions to the department. If you could, at some stage, DG, also share your responses to those questions with the committee through the committee secretaries. Back to you, DG.
Thank you, Chair. The first part of the question, we often get this complaint, Chair, and just rightly or wrongly, I mean, we don't intend to defend inspectors when they engage in in activities that are contrary to the values of the department and government. So my standard response to questions like this is that I'd really appreciate if we do not generalize. So if you tell me the name of the inspector, the office where the inspector comes from, and the nature of the issue that the inspector was supposed to have done, I'll really appreciate that so that we can begin to take steps to weed out people who should not be in the department if they take bribes. And we've had instances where hawks have arrested some of the inspectors because they took bribes and we acted. So to empower us, we need to know who these people are and so that we can start acting. So it's going to be very difficult for me to respond generally, because I'm going to state what is it that we do as a department and how an inspector ought to behave in line with the code of good practice that we have for all our inspectors and the officials that we have in the department. So my plea, Chair, if they have those complaints and they know who these officials are, please let us know so that we can start acting. The second part of the question, which relates to the CCMA, is that we've had some of these complaints previously, and whenever we hear these, we will then refer them to the national director of the CCMA, and he addresses them. And again, if we can get specifics around this matter, we will make sure that the national director of the CCMA responds and addresses these areas, because we want to make sure that the CCMA, its reputation is not tarnished by people who don't do what they're supposed to do, if the allegations are true. If the allegations are not true, we also don't want its name to be tarnished by people because they just level unsubstantiated allegations against the CCMA. So we want specifics so that we can get to the bottom of these allegations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG, for the responses to the questions. We'll now hand over to the Honorable DM. Over to you, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. One moment. Honorable Chairperson, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and honorable members of the portfolio of the Select Committee, our Minister, if he's still around, and our DG, and including all senior officials of our department, ladies and gentlemen. Let me thank you first, Honorable Chairperson, for this opportunity and welcome you back. I can see you are alive and kicking. Welcome back. We are delighted to see you recuperating so well under the circumstances, Honorable Chairperson, and we wish you complete healing on all outstanding and emerging opportunistic illnesses emanating from COVID complications. I know how you feel. I can relate to this as a COVID survivor, Honorable Chair, and allow me, Chairperson, to join you in passing my sincere and deepest condolences to the families of our dearly departed honorable members who have since departed from this world, especially Honorable Nombulelo Hermans, who was part of the portfolio committee of DEL, who would have been, he was part of us, and I think that it is befitting that I do this now. And I'm including also Honorable Minister Mthembu and our recently departed Honorable Tozama Mantashe, who is a member of Parliament, to their families to say, may their soul rest in peace. Honorable Chairperson, I'm sure at some point we'll have to reflect on the life after COVID-19. Now that we have the vaccine, and as a department, we must encourage our people to participate in the herd immunity programs so that the country can go back to normal and build the economy and create the jobs that we lost due to the pandemic itself. And Honorable Chairperson, I'm sure you are aware that I was in hospital for 10 days. It might have been less than your days. And today, it's my 19th day out of hospital since I've been discharged, and I'm doing well, you can see too, but I feel what you feel, I feel too, so I sympathize with you. So we are in this together. So we are in the same WhatsApp group. So, Chair, I think me and you, including the Minister and all the survivors of COVID-19, we should be thankful that we are here today. The battle is very fierce. Only God knows how we made it thus far. But honorable members, the overall performance of the department, although at 79%, is really commendable given the circumstances within which the department had to adjust due to the COVID pandemic itself. The department managed to maintain the unqualified audit in the difficult times of the COVID, and I can boldly say that there will be nothing stopping us from achieving the clean audit in the immediate future. We come from the worst period in our lives and we managed to survive these tough times as the department, so we still be there. So there will be nothing stopping us again, Honorable Chair. We commend those men and women who were amenable to the adjustments introduced by government and the department itself. And some of these adjustments disrupted their family lives by encroaching on their valuable times, but really, they really responded very well to national duty. We understand that most of these officials had to confront the pandemic head on and help the department and the entire government to stay connected with the people amidst the virus that wreaked havoc of our lives, that destroyed society's infrastructure and jobs. Sometimes, Honorable Chair, despite the shortcomings, we don't necessarily give credit where it is due. Sometimes we criticize every time where we find the opportunity. But it is at this point, I think that is very crucial that sometimes as members, as honorable members, we need to give credit where it is due. Our inspectors, the number that is very limited that the DG has spoken about, that they have been actually up and about. All our inspectors, they have been in difficult situations. Some employers refuse to open up for them, and I'm sure we need to really at some point applaud them. And we know that some countries might have disappeared during this pandemic. Democracies were tested and economies collapsed. Our programs, despite all the challenges, Honorable Chairperson, carried us through this pandemic. And we take lessons from this period, and we hope to keep the systems and solutions that carried us through the difficult test of this pandemic. I am comfortable, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members, and I must say that with the responses given by the Director General, Tate Lamati, and officials, and all officials, and we take note of the inputs made by honorable members. Honorable Chairperson, I agree with Honorable Director, and this is what we have been pursuing as the department, that it should be mandatory for all government departments to procure from our SEE. We also are aware, Honorable Chairperson, yourself and Honorable Moimang and other members of this select committee have been very vocal in this regard, and a lot of progress have been registered. With some commitments made by several departments, and some entities are still outstanding. So we are doing a good job, Honorable Chair. So you don't have to be too hard on yourselves. We are doing a good job. We commit, Honorable Chair, as the executive, to improve in areas where we lacked, especially in the provinces and branches that underperformed, and to work harder to achieve our targets. We further reiterate our commitment, Honorable Chairperson, to achieve the clean audit and improve on critical areas of focus. Allow me, Honorable Chairperson, to thank you heartily for allowing me to close this session of the Select Committee, and thank you, honorable members, for your audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. I'm also taking this opportunity to also wish you well. We did receive information first that from the Chief Whip of the majority party that you were hospitalized. We also thank God that you also survived. Yeah, we really wish you well so that you also fully recover from this COVID-19. Thank you very much. We also thank the DG and the DDGs, CFO, for the report. We have noted the areas of improvement. We hope that when we meet again, we would have moved from 79% possible to 100%, and from the unqualified audit outcome to the clean audit. We're looking forward to the improvement. Otherwise, we really thank you for the comprehensive report and the areas that of performance that you have identified. But also, perhaps we, on the part of the committee, will have to visit and perhaps ask the content advisor to draft a report on the outcome of the meeting that are referred to, where the departments and NEF were invited, so that we make a follow-up on the outcome of that particular meeting, and perhaps make a proposal to the House, and then make a follow-up, particularly with Treasury, on the issue of assisting the SEE. Maybe it should also be our project as a committee that we follow up to its logical conclusion. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, and also thank the Minister who was with us, but had indicated that he was to leave to attend to another meeting. Thank you very much, honorable members, officials of Parliament, for the work you've been doing to assist the committee. And also like to thank Honorable Moimang for the period that I was unable to perform parliamentary duties for holding the fort, chairing all the meetings of this particular committee, and also thank the members and staff for the prayers. I think for me, it is the prayers. It's not that I did anything different from other people that contracted the virus. I think it is through prayers and by the grace of God that I managed to survive. Thank you very much, everybody. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, the honorable members.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chair. Thank you
Chair.
so
Thank
much.
you, Chair.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Long live the Chair.
Thank you very much.
Comrade, Ndate Moimang.
Long live. Long live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Viva, hi, viva.
Thank you very much, honorable team. Much appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.